Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Ian Tuttle of National Review is in for Jim Garrity today. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives. And don't hyperventilate, but the good martini is actually things we agree with when it comes to Donald Trump. But before we get to that, we have a follow-up on yesterday's crazy martini, and that was the independent Republican presidential bid of one Evan McMullin, former high-ranking staffer on the House Republican side, former CIA official. Ian, he stopped by the National Review offices yesterday, so what did you learn about him?
Yeah, we wrapped up, you and I, Greg, and he came in a quick hour later with a small support staff and gave us his first on-the-record interview. Unfortunately, all of the logistical problems still stand. You know, the potential for Trump folks scapegoating and, there's a dreadful scenario in which Trump could win a series of swing states and lose Utah and, lose by 4 electoral votes in the general. And, all these things are still legitimate concerns. But I think it's worth saying that McMullin is a sober guy, articulate, thoughtful, quiet, which is a marked contrast to the other candidates on offer. He has an impressive resume with serious national security credentials, and I think perhaps most importantly, he really does seem, at least on a first glance, and of course more will come out over the next couple days and weeks, presumably, but truly a guy who offers an honorable alternative to the two major party candidates and someone who genuinely loves the country and feels like he's doing his patriotic duty. So again, all of the logistical and political pitfalls remain. But if Evan McMullin had been in the race 3 months ago or 6 months ago or the rest, I think a lot of people would have been willing to give him a fairly serious look, and perhaps they still will.
Well, we'll find out. He hasn't received his first Trump-directed tweet yet, though.
This is right.
We'll see how he handles it when the big time really comes his way.
That means Paul Manafort has taken away Trump's phone privileges. So.
All right. Speaking of Trump, as we foreshadowed, he actually is the good martini today. Trump gave a major economic speech to the Detroit Economic Club on Monday. And while it's probably safe to say, as conservatives, we don't necessarily agree with everything Trump said, when compared to Hillary Clinton, a lot of these principles will certainly look good in comparison. Just a couple of lines from his speech here. He says, in short, the city of Detroit is the living, breathing example of my opponent's failed economic agenda. Every policy that has failed this city and so many others is a policy supported by Hillary Clinton. She supports the high taxes and radical regulation that force jobs out of your community and the crime policies that have made you less safe. On tax reform, he says he wants an across-the-board income tax reduction, especially for middle-income Americans. He says that'll lead to millions of new good-paying jobs. He calls the current tax code so burdensome and complex that we waste 9 billion hours a year in tax code compliance. He says my plan will reduce the number of brackets from 7 to 3 and dramatically streamline the process. On corporate taxes, he wants businesses to pay no more than 15% in comparison to Hillary Clinton, who wants to make it even higher than it already is, which is near 40%. He also wants to cut back on needless and burdensome regulations, and he wants to radically upgrade America's efforts to tap our own energy resources. So he also had a big section on trade, which Republicans will obviously be pretty divided on, Ian. But in terms of general principles, he outlined things I think, for the most part, a lot of people agree with. It's obviously a deeply flawed messenger in the minds of many, and some might say, well, Larry Kudlow wrote a nice speech here. But in the end, there are some things to like here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixed bag, and when it comes to Trump, a mixed bag is better than the normal. So, everything being relative. Start with the nonsense. You're never going to bring the automotive industry back to Detroit, and it's pure fantasy to say so. Dismantling NAFTA, withdrawing preemptively from TPP, all of these things are probably bad decisions. There's some real clunkers in here. My colleague Kevin Williamson today points out that there's a proposed hike on the long-term capital gains tax, which is likely to do serious damage to innovation, particularly in Silicon Valley and the vast number of people trying to develop technology-related startups. These are serious things that are negatives that need to be dealt with. All of that said, there are some good things here, which I think are, to a certain extent, the fact that Trump has marginally smarter business people than he is working on his campaign. The tax structure is taken more or less from bills that are up among House Republicans in alignment with Paul Ryan. All of the EPA, cutting back EPA regulations and the rest is good stuff. The general principle of tax cutting obviously is far better than the alternative on offer in Hillary Clinton. I think there's some inflated projections about the benefit that the tax cuts that Trump is proposing will do. I mean, I think Kudlow's written about this before, that we cut taxes along these lines, and you can expect the 5+% growth that you saw under JFK and Reagan. I think that's largely fantastical. But, these kind of things are, again, certainly better than what Hillary's offering, which is a slate of tax increases and just a number of open doors for even more sort of nickel and diming along the way, plus all of the onerous regulations and such that she would happily carry over from the Obama administration. So, again, there's a lot here that will displease conservatives, but on the whole, there are a couple good things which ought to be praised.
Let's move on to Hillary Clinton now. She is once again in the bad martini, although she's not the direct focus of the bad martini, but the implication here is kind of twisted here, Ian. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton did a rally in Kissimmee, Florida. I think I'm saying that right. Kudos to NBC's affiliate there, Channel 5 WPTV, for noticing right over Hillary Clinton's shoulder was Sadiq Mateen. And if you don't recognize that name, he's the father of the Orlando terrorist who killed 49 people and injured scores of others in the shooting at the Pulse nightclub back in June. And Channel 5 tried to get an interview with him in the parking lot. They did not succeed for the most part, but then they bumped into him at a rest stop a little bit outside of town and got this from him.
Clinton is good for the United States versus Donald Trump.
He wanted to do an interview and showed us a sign he made for Hillary Clinton.
So tell us why you wanted to stop and talk now.
Because it's very important for the United States of America, especially the election. I was invited by Democratic Party.
So the father of the terrorist was invited by the Democratic Party, and he's enthusiastically endorsing Hillary Clinton. The sign he mentioned points out that Hillary says she would make the biggest investment since World War II, that she would be good for national security, that she told the truth about Benghazi, and that she would strengthen gun control laws. So, Ian, I'm not sure where the irony starts and the horrific part kicks in here, but the fact that this guy is all in for Hillary. If this had been a relative of a mass shooter who was all in for Trump or any Republican, this would be dominating the news right now.
This is the weirdest story, and I say that acknowledging the fact that we have Donald Trump as the GOP nominee and everything associated with that. This is the strangest thing. Sadiq Mateen is free to support, whichever presidential candidate he wants, et cetera, et cetera. There's almost no chance in my mind that this was not in some way set up. It's bizarre. I mean, he was right over her shoulder.
Right.
How did that happen? That's bizarre. Secondly, the media trying to dismiss this is wild. I mean, it's so patently self-serving. This is just the most transparent sort of bias trying to dismiss this as a weird non-story. The third thing is, if Donald Trump can't capitalize on this, then he should just get out of the race now, because this is a slow pitch over the plate, right in the zone for him. And if somehow he manages to botch this, not pick up at least a couple points, he should sit down. It's bad. It's also just crazy.
It really is crazy. Yeah, this could have been the first crazy martini out of the two. And the fact that he's excited about more gun control laws suggests that perhaps he's blaming the laws more than his son, although he has I guess, condemned his son's actions in the past. But he's had a series of bizarre comments in the wake of the Pulse Club shooting, too. So this guy is no choir boy, and he's also pro-Taliban, if we needed to throw that log onto the fire, too.
He has a bizarre and troubling political history himself. So, that's which is, of course, part of the reason that the media is trying to nip this story in the bud before it really develops.
Apparently, it's really hard to get off the Democratic email list. Anyway, on to the crazy Martini now. And this takes us actually back to Sunday and CNN's State of the Union. John Kasich, the Ohio governor, former Republican candidate for president, was talking about how he's out there helping every Republican win with the exception of Donald Trump. And he was asked by Jake Tapper about some of the folks that Trump was reluctant to endorse but ultimately did, like Paul Ryan, Kelly Ayotte, and John McCain. And so Kasich went through the reasons why he thinks Paul Ryan and Kelly Ayotte are doing a good job. And then he got to John McCain, and apparently we don't need the Constitution when it comes to John McCain. Here's what Kasich had to say about the fact that John McCain's in a tough re-election fight.
John McCain is such an amazing guy, not just an American hero, but here's a guy who has served his country well. He's outspoken. He takes orders from no one. As far as I'm concerned, McCain shouldn't even have to run for election in the Senate. He ought to be in the Senate as long as he wants to be.
Senator for life, Ian. We like this guy, so he shouldn't have to be evaluated by the constituents and the voters anymore. What's this deal with the people?
I mean, presumably Kasich was trying to be funny here, but this is one of those just ridiculously stupid things to say. When the shoe is on the other foot, for instance, would you say that, Ted Kennedy, who served forever and never should have a lifetime appointment, Daniel Inouye from Hawaii, Robert Byrd, the KKK Grand Wizard. I mean, at a certain point, do all these people deserve lifetime appointments for their long years of service? I mean, think before you speak, John. John McCain, I certainly agree with Kasich here and enormously disagree with Trump on the scurrilous things that he said about McCain. John McCain is a hero in the American pantheon, but he's also a public servant who deserves to be held accountable, like all of them. He's facing a primary race this year against Kelly Ward down there in Arizona, and that's a healthier situation than the alternative, which is rubber stamping people back into office, regardless of how much you like them.
Ian, maybe we need to give Kasich credit here. Maybe he's saying that the 17th Amendment was a horrible idea and that really state legislatures should continue to appoint senators. That would still kind of fly in the face of his doesn't need to be reelected type of thing. But when you look at how many states are dominated by Republican legislatures, the balance of the Senate would be pretty darn cool if we didn't have the 17th Amendment right now.
Goodness, Greg, that's a Vox-worthy hot take right there, just right off the top of the dome. We can debate the 17th Amendment another time, but unfortunately, I don't think that John Kasich was going for the esoteric reading of his McCain comments.
Ian, good to have you today, as always. Talk to you tomorrow.
Oh, boy. All right. Talk to you tomorrow, Greg.
Ian Tuttle of National Review. And for Jim Garrity today, I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.